of fact, on that note, one of my, a guy, a guy by the name of Joel Webbon, he's a Christian nationalist preacher, pseudo intellectual, a pseudo intellectual, a pseudo scholar, and he recently said some pretty horrible. Things along the lines of loving your neighbor. Anyway, Joel Webbon, there was a clip on Right Wing Watch. Somebody sent me a clip from Right Wing Watch, which they do a lot of interesting little snippets of what people have to say. And in this one particular snippet, our buddy Joel told the world and everybody listening that it is basically that it's a Christian civic leader's responsibility to terrorize their enemy. It's our responsibility to terrorize our enemy. Literally, Christians in a position of power should make it so that their enemies have nightmares, worried about what Christians are going to do to them. I just can't, how, why would that? Listen, okay, first, no. Okay, no. Now, he points back to Romans chapter 13. We talked about Romans 13 earlier this week, where we're supposed to honor those who are put in authority. And in Romans 13, it talks about a leader. And Paul's talking to the people, and he says, listen, it's a leader's responsibility. Their job isn't to terrorize people who obey the law, but those who don't obey the law. They are not a terror to those who follow the law. They are a terror to those who disobey the law. That's what a person of authority is. And he does talk about these people are put in authority by God and all of these different things. Now, in our conversations, I've mentioned that the authority of my land, of Canada, is the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That's our Constitution. In the United States, it's that beautiful document, the Constitution, and the surrounding documents that go along with it. These are the authorities of our land. These are the authorities that we are to listen to. These are the authorities I believe that God has put in place. But Joel is taking this from the perspective of, see, Paul says that an authority is someone who terrorizes their enemies. And when a Christian takes on that role, you're to be the authority that Paul's talking about. Paul is not talking along those lines at all. That's not the context. Paul is telling a group of persecuted Christians, a group of believers who find it really difficult to live within the structure of Rome. And he's giving them some encouragement. And he's trying to help them see themselves through. He's trying to offer them some direction. He's not telling them, when you get power, you be a person who terrorizes the world. No. Just please stop with that. If Christians gain power, and again, historically speaking, we do really badly when we've been given power. But when Christians gain power, we are to be Christ-like. That's our responsibility, right? We're still followers of Christ. I'm a Christian who's elected to power. Yay, now I can terrorize people. No, I'm a Christian who's been elected to power. I'm still a Christ follower, first and foremost. I just happen to have this job. So I'm going to do this job as a person who is following Jesus. Does that mean that I punish people? No. Do I punish people who voted for the other guy? No. Do I punish people who are with the other party? No. Do I punish people who think differently? No. Do I punish people who act, who have a different policy agenda? No. Or different values? No. They're not my enemy. As a matter of fact, as a Christian in a position of power, I have no enemy. I that's kind of the premise that Jesus gets to us when he says, love your enemy, pray for those who persecute you. Treat them like family. Treat them like you would a friend. Treat them like you would somebody you love. They should be somebody you love. But if I'm that Christian in that place of power, following along with Jesus, then I am going to turn the other cheek, and I am going to forgive 7 times, 7 times, and I am going to pray for those who would persecute me, and I am going to love those who would seek to destroy me, because that's what I'm told to do. That's what the big guy tells me to do, and that's what I want to do, because ultimately I want to please God. And if these are the teachings of Jesus, and this is what I'm going to do, I'm not going to look at this and say, now I can vanquish the enemies of God. God has no enemies. God has no enemies. There might be people who consider God to be an enemy, but God has no enemies because nobody can harm God. And if somebody in this world can harm God, then we really have to ask ourselves, what kind of God is it that we worship? As Christians who find themselves in places of power, again, and I think I'm probably going to end up saying this till I'm blue in the face, we are to be kind and gentle and merciful and forgiving and patient. We are to show forbearance, and we are to be nice, and we are to be compassionate, and we are to be charitable, and we are ultimately, at the end of the day, above all other things, to show everyone love. A Christian, if I am out to give you nightmares, I should be ashamed of myself. Take it from an evangelical perspective, right? Somebody said earlier, just talking about how do you make a church better. Well, Sting, the musician, says the only way a church gets better is one by one. A church gets better as we share the gospel. If I'm giving people nightmares, am I sharing the gospel? If I'm giving them nightmares about how I, in my position, am going to punish them, am I sharing the gospel? If we as Christians in positions of authority and positions of power, given to us by God through election, if we have people out there in the world terrified about what we as Christians, as the church, are going to do to them, am I sharing the gospel? There's no way. There's no way I can possibly be sharing the gospel. What people like Joel Webben is describing is a theocracy. It's a police state. It's a police state, and I think what you hear when people like Joel Webben speak along these lines, when they say we are to terrorize others, what they're saying is we are terrified of others. When they say we are to give others nightmares, we're to give them nightmares, wondering what Christians are going to do to them. What he's saying is, I have nightmares about what other people will do to me, what they'll do to my family, what they'll do to my church, what they'll do to the people like me. And what that tells us is something about their faith. That tells us that they don't believe other passages, like the one I mentioned earlier. Go forward, lead my people. Be bold and courageous. I will always be with you. They don't believe that. And they don't believe what Paul says in this letter. If God is with me, who can stand against me? If God is with us, who can stand against us? They don't believe the good news of the gospel. If they don't believe the good news of the gospel, then yes, I guess terrorizing a populace, terrorizing people who think differently, who believe differently, who worship differently, terrorizing people who may love differently, who come from different places. Yes, that is the only path for people like this. It's the only place that they'll find safety and comfort, because they certainly don't find it in the words. They certainly don't find it in the life. They certainly don't find it in the person of Jesus Christ. Amen.